So Kevin Feige and the team behind the MCU, of course, Marvel, has been in a recent role on a tear, giving us really great movies over the past couple of years. And it's to a point now where even when they give us mediocrity, it's still pretty good. And with that, I'm welcome to another episode of The Road Mentor. My goal, as always, is to enhance your movie watching experience. So Captain Marvel, this is the appetizer before the main course and Avengers Endgame coming up in about a month and a half here. This is one, of course, starring Brie Larson, Academy Award-winning Brie Larson here, playing the role of Captain Marvel. And there's one a lot of ways a lot of people are looking forward to. How does it connect with, of course, the Endgame upcoming? And I'll say this: it's at the end of the day, it's okay. It's a solid, good, entertaining movie. Just nothing great. Now you've seen the trailers, you know what this kind of movie is basically about here. This is an origin story, of course, of someone who Kevin Feige says is the most powerful member of the Avengers, I guess. And, it starts off with, Brie Larson's character. She's a part of this team called the Star Force, the team made up of Kree members who are out there fighting against the Skrulls. And at one point, she ends up on Earth chasing some of the Skrulls, and she discovers who she really is about her hidden past, because she is, of course, from Earth. And she's discovering who she was and the circumstances behind how she became a member of the Kree. No, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to spoil anything here. And ultimately, again, this is a movie which I thought was fine. I mean, this is one where, eventually Marvel had to fall to. They can't give us home runs every single time. This is a movie which I would say it's burgers and fries. It's a nice, good, decent meal. It's not going to blow you away, but it gets the job done when you're hungry. And essentially, this movie does a lot of things right. And again, it's still enough where it's very entertaining. I definitely recommend you guys watch it, particularly if you're a Marvel fan. There's no reason not to watch this movie, but just perhaps curb the expectations here. Now, let me start with what I like about this movie, and I'll get into what prevented this movie from being as great as I thought it could have been. Performances were fine. Brie Larson was good, but she wasn't great. I like Sam Jackson. The de-aging technology worked really well. Was not distracting, which I thought may be the case. He was good. He was fun seeing like a young Nick Fury before he became the Nick Fury, which we know of now, of course, currently. You have, of course, I think of Brie Larson's best friend from Earth before she became a Kree. I thought she was really strong as well. Ben Mendelsohn I thought was great as well as the main Skrull member. He worked really well. Jude Law was fine. They were good. And then I thought, in terms of just the pure spectacle we come to see from Marvel, it's there for the most part. The action is good. It's solid. It's just no real scene really stood out in terms of the action scene, no grand reels. A scene that just sticks in your mind saying, man, that was awesome. That wasn't quite there. It was very uneven. This whole movie is kind of uneven, particularly the pacing. The first hour is definitely a lot slower, a lot of build up. The second hour is a little bit stronger, and it ends well for the most part. But ultimately, it is entertaining. The action is there. It looks great. Cool characters. But the problem is Brie Larson, and it's not one of the problems. It's not her performance per se. She's fine, but she's not giving a whole lot to do here. And the character is very underwritten. She's not giving great dialogue. She doesn't have a moment to really shine, and there's no real arc to her character. She starts off and ends off being the same person, except she just discovers she's got more powers and abilities that she was aware of at the beginning. But essentially, her character is the same. She might learn about herself in the past, but she goes through no changes, no real emotional connection that we have with that character. And oddly enough, in a superhero movie, the superhero should be the most interesting and likable character, and end up being that everyone else around her was a lot more interesting. And I'll say this because this movie, I can see is inevitably being compared to Wonder Woman, because obviously it was the first, both of these movies are for their own brand, with the first female-led superhero movies, DC and Marvel. But what was so good about Wonder Woman is that you really cared about her. She was flawed, and she went through a learning process, and you really discover who she's about, what really drives her, and we connected to that. With Captain Marvel, Brie Larson, we just didn't get that connection itself. She was kind of very dry for the most part. And that's what really, I thought, really undersold the movie for me. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's still fine. Again, some of the writings that are off, besides her character, just the narrative, how it was told, could have been done better, could have spent more time with her and her best friend and really build that connection she had with her humanity. And I just think it failed to do that. I just kind of went through the motions and really took more time setting up the world of Marvel, what we know, connecting dots and setting up what, of course, was inevitably going to happen in Endgame, as opposed to really focusing on her character. And that's a big issue here. And it's prevented this movie to being elevated to what we've seen recently. I mean, this is a very middle-of-the-road MCU movie. That being said, a middle-of-the-road MCU movie is still pretty good and still pretty entertaining, ultimately, at the end of the day. So besides, I mean, and yes, and I'll say this because there are some really great moments. I know Goose the cat, I thought was great. It was funny. It was interesting and different. What that cat actually ended up being. You know, but at the same time, there's some scenes which were just awful. I mean, I can honestly say there was one particular scene, and I won't spoil it, but that reminded me a lot of Solo and how he got his name, which I thought was was the worst scene in Star Wars history. This is probably the worst scene that MCU has ever given us. It just didn't make any sense, and it's like that's how that thing ended up being the way it was. It was just dumb. It was just really dumb, and things like that happen here and there in this movie. Where so it wasn't, like I said, very uneven, and ultimately not great, just okay, solid. You know, whatever. There are a couple of end credit scenes at the end. Of course, like Marvel always does. There's two of them. The first one is really interesting, but I thought it was, and when you see it, you know it's a little bit too spoilery for what we're gonna see in Endgame, unfortunately. The second end credit scene is garbage, is a waste of fucking time. See the first credit scene, walk out. It reminds me almost like the last scene in Ant-Man the Wasp with the ant at the end with the jumps. It's just a useless scene for you to stick around for 10 minutes for the credits. It's a waste of time. Don't bother with it. See the first one and then walk out. So, Captain Marvel, you guys are going to watch it. I still recommend it. You should. It's still a fun time at the movies at the end of the day. Comment below, let me know where you guys thought. And of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe below and feed money to go to the movies and talk about it afterwards. See you guys next time.